Well, let's talk an unfortunate matchup this weekend because one of these teams is going to end up 0-3 after 3 weeks. Time for the lead block.
Lead block.
The Chargers dropped to 0-2 after an overtime loss to the Titans on Sunday. They've lost their last 3 games, including the playoff loss that Brandon Staley does not want to hear about, to Jacksonville. Those games combined, the losses were a total of 6 points. And a reporter asked Staley if there was any hangover from that loss to the Jaguars, and here was his answer.
I'm not worried about the Jacksonville loss. The Jacksonville loss hasn't carried on to the season whatsoever. If you've seen our training camp or you've seen the way we've played in the first 2 games, it hasn't had an impact on our team whatsoever. Our team is connected. Our team has played its heart out in 2 games, and we've lost 2 tough games. But it has nothing to do with the Jacksonville game. And if you ask anyone in our locker room, it has nothing to do with the Jacksonville game. And that's just the truth. It's a convenient storyline for you and for everybody else, but it's not the truth. We've lost 2 tough games. But the guys in that locker room, the men in that locker room, they are finishers and they have what it takes, and we're excited to prove ourselves. We just lost a game in overtime, Jeff, so how do you think the mood is? How do you think the mood is? How do you think it is? It's tough. It's tough. It's a tough group in there. There's a lot of pride in that room, okay? And we put a lot into this, and we got a good football team. And so we've lost 2 tough games. We've got to bounce back, learn from our mistakes, and be ready for Minnesota.
Jeff, how do you think it is, right, Jeff?
Come on,
Answer
Jeff.
those questions, Jeff. Coach, also the speed in which you are answering those questions really tells me that it hasn't carried over. LA trying to get ready for Minnesota, the reigning NFC North champions, but they have also started out 0-2 with a loss at home to the Buccaneers and then on the road Thursday night against the Eagles. Which team do you think has had a more confusing start with what you expected to happen for the Chargers or the Vikings?
I think it's the Vikings. Yeah. If you were to tell me in the week 1 the Cousins would have 4 touchdowns and no interceptions, I'm like, oh, they win. No, they still lost. You know, and they lost to the Buccaneers, and then they lose to the Eagles. And what's crazy is that, you know, last year this team was looked at as the luckiest team in the league. And this is a take that's out there in several articles. Luckiest team, things bouncing their way. And then this year it feels like they're the unluckiest team. The Jefferson fumble was a massive play, a massive, massive play in this game that had people, worst rule in sports, on and on and on. And he makes that play like the game could go totally differently. And he doesn't. He fumbles. Bucs game was bizarre. I still think this team is really good, and I feel like put it this way. Last year they had the biggest comeback in NFL history. I feel like they can come back from 0-2. I think they have it in them. But, God, there's all these analytics out here. There's these analytics that I'm starting to be fascinated by where they measure things like dropped interceptions by the opponent, dropped passes, and it's like a real luck factor. Like, they're deep in that stuff, that the Vikings have been snake-bitten by that stuff, and it sounds like apologist talk and whiner loser talk. They are 0-2. I just still feel like they're much better than that. I can't believe that they lost both those games, especially the Tampa game.
It's an interesting take because you talk about they were undefeated in those 1-score games.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is the bounce of the ball, and sometimes it bounces your way, injuries, all of those things. But I think it's the Chargers. You just talked about, you look at Kirk Cousins threw 4 touchdown passes, no interceptions, and they lost the game. For the Chargers, they have, so far in the season, 50 points and 0 turnovers, and they haven't won a game.
That's good, Jeff.
Like, it's unbelievable to have those type of stats to be putting up that many points in the first 2 weeks of the season, and you're not turning the ball over. Like, for the Vikings in that game, they had a fumble, they had different things happen. For the Chargers, that's not happening. So you talk about the defense giving up a ton of points. They're not stopping anybody. That's a huge problem. Then on top of that, they're in these games. It's not like, because they can score points, it's coming down to the end of it. But you look at week 1, Tyreek Hill going for 200 yards, Tua going for 466. Then the Titans game. They're continuing to give up points at too high of a clip, and big plays at that, as you're watching Treylon Burks make a big one. But on top of that, Justin Herbert's the guy, and they're getting to the end of these games, and they're not able to finish them. Against the Titans, the game goes into overtime. The Chargers get the ball first. Go score a touchdown.
Go backwards.
They end up punting the ball. Titans go, Nick Folk hits a game-winning field goal. Against the Miami Dolphins, they have the ball. The game ends on a sack by the Miami Dolphins. So you're scoring points throughout the game. You can't score when it matters most, and you can't stop anybody when it matters most, and that's why they're on 2. But you look at their roster, and you're just like,
they're so loaded.
It's a ton of talent.
See, let me ask you something. That question to Brandon Staley about the Jacksonville game, do you think there's something to that they don't know how to win, and there's a psychological scar tissue that happens? Because we're seeing at the end of the games, they're not themselves.
I think learning how to win is huge. I do think there's something to that. They won 10 games last year, so you would think you're starting to figure it out. I don't think the playoff loss has any.
Is there a
impact.
hangover?
I don't think there's any hangover. It's a new year. You're ready to go. I think the issue is you combine the playoff loss with now things aren't falling in the right direction. Now it's starting to just like, well, what's wrong with us? Like we're not who we think we can be because the proof is in the pudding.
It's a really interesting conversation if you look at tangible versus intangible stuff. And in this thing, I'm looking at those two logos. We started the segment showing the Niners and the Giants logos. Those are winners. At some point, you look at these two logos, are you surprised they're 0-2? And it has nothing to do with the players on the team, has nothing to do with the new owners of the team, has nothing to do with the new coach. You look at those two logos, are you surprised that these teams are disappointing you?
No.
I see those logos, I think a lot of really good fantasy players and like stats. And
Historically.
Yeah. It's just always great players on those teams.
Neither team has ever won a Super Bowl. The Vikings have lost heartbreaking games in their history. The Chargers have lost It's almost like, no, I can't be surprised that those two logos, despite Justin Herbert being totally different than anyone who's ever been quarterback on that team. There's a Twitter guy that I follow, He's a writer. His name's Fabian Sommer, and he had a great tweet. I bookmarked it. It's him retweeting an article, and the article is, girl who lost her memory falls in love with the same boyfriend. So good. And then in the repost says, me and the Chargers every single August. Like, to do this again and again, like, I fall in love with you again, this is what it is. Jason, you only scratched the surface. The Chargers are the only team in the Super Bowl era ever to score 50 points or more through 2 games and have no turnovers and not win a game.
It doesn't make sense.
Ever.
Yeah.
The Chargers have 0 giveaways this season and are 0-2. One of 4 teams ever in the history of sport to do that. Herbert's been excellent. And yet, fourth quarters and overtimes, crazy things just seem to happen to them. I think the Chargers are the more confusing start. You get rid of Joe Lombardi. You think you finally got rid of the toxic reason why we're not scoring enough points. You do score the points, and it's still not good enough. Now, Brandon Staley, who I will tell you is viewed as a defensive mastermind, a savant. He comes from the Vic Fangio tree. He gives everyone. McVay hired him because he could not figure out this defense and was like, "You're going to be my defensive coordinator. I don't understand what you guys run in Denver. I got to get you over here." For that defense to be just obliterated by Tyreek 1 week after a whole offseason of training and preparing, and then for a Tennessee Titans team that could not score a touchdown against the Saints in week 1 to go and just have their way with the Chargers. It's shocking. 0-2 is not an insurmountable hole. I remember the Chargers back when Seau was there and said they were 0-4 and they went to the Super Bowl. Like, they've done it. But those two logos, confusing? No, I'm not confused. That's what these logos have done over the years. And it's these current version of this team to show it's not about the jersey, it's not about the logo, it's about us. But to start off 0-2, it's like, what do you want me to do?
It's about setting the standard and what people expect from you. And that is a sad statement, Peter, that I just had to listen to, but it is factually correct and emotionally correct for a lot of people as well. When I look at the Vikings start, to me, this one is the more confusing one, and I know that's low-hanging fruit, but I'm still going to go there. The defense, statistically, has gotten better. They've improved. Brian Flores is there. Guys are flying around the field. He probably still doesn't have his guys that he wants. There's kind of a weird stopgap here with you bring in a new GM and a head coach 2 years ago. Okay, so they got some of their guys. They had to make decisions about Kirk Cousins, but there needed to be a change at defense, but that happened a year later. So Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell are only just getting their guys in there a year in, but now Brian Flores is new. So there's going to be a ripple effect here, a delay, I think, of how this team can really come together and win a lot of games powerfully. That was the thing about the luck last year, was that the ball bounced their way, but there was just never this slam the door, beating up on teams. This is a matter-of-fact win. You can only hang your hat on luck so long. And the turnovers, to hear the Chargers have not turned the ball over, and yet the Vikings would beat some teams with the amount of turnovers that they've had so far this season, which I think is at 7 at this point, which is shocking, yet they've lost both games in a combination of 9 points. Something has to come together. Right now, the Vikings, to me, it's more confusing because more people expected the Vikings, I think, to not only win that to make it the playoffs, win the division, as opposed to the Chargers and theirs.
It does seem like a bit of a dueling Spider-Man deal with the two of these teams. Like, wait, you're me and I'm you. Like, it's the same thing.
And those records.
This could be a really ugly game.
Listen, one of them is going to have a huge win this weekend.
Yes.
We're good. And then the 0-3 team, my God, I feel bad for them.
Yep.
It's their fault.
The girl who lost her memory falls in love with the same boyfriend. Yeah. It's a tale as old as time.
51st
That's a
date.
love story. That's a love story.
51st
That means
Drew
they're meant to
Barrymore's
be
having a week.
together.
Right. Yeah, she